Hello, I'm retired Battalion Chief Larry Cockman from the Greensboro, North Carolina Fire Department History Book Committee. We're here today at the Greensboro Historical Museum. I'm standing in front of the General Green, the first steam pumper, or as they called it back then, a steamer. Today, December 9th, 2019, we are starting a new tradition of recording and preserving the heritage and culture of our retirees. Our retirees have contributed so much to the success of our great fire department. Their stories retire with them and are sometimes gone forever when they pass away. They will share their emergency calls that will always be a part of their memories forever. So sit back and listen as they carry us through their journey in the Greensboro Fire Department.
Ronald Osborne, 77 years old. When I retired, I was captain. I'm from Pleasant Garden. My family's lived on the property that I live on since 1753. So, as far as I know, none of my family were ever firefighters. I was driving a fuel oil delivery, home delivery truck locally in Greensboro. And in life, I was 19 years old, married with one child, had just moved into a new house, and get my life started, I guess. We had 3 or 4 part-time workers at the oil company where I did. It helped us in the cold weather. It was Graham Fuquay and Sam Goins and Red Wren. And they all occasionally rode with me, and they kept telling me I need to be a firefighter. And I'd never been in a fire station. So they said, they're hiring, go up and talk to them. So I went up and actually the day that I went to Duke Power, I went to Bell Telephone, and I went to the fire department. And I was offered a job at all 3 places, and I chose the fire department because I knew somebody there. I knew the guys that I had been working with. Well, I met with Chief O'Shea and interviewed, and he said, you need to get a physical and do this. And I did all of that and fingerprinted and so forth, and was hired. I never considered it until I started working with these guys that were firefighters. Never been in a fire station. I mean, there were 16 in my training class. As far as I remember, there could have been 17, could have been 15, but I think there was 16. For a farm boy, the training was very simple, other than some of the book work, some of the math and stuff. You know, that I never was, you know, I'm really good at math, but I never did understand algebra, but I had to learn to understand it whenever I started doing reach of ladders and pump pressures and stuff. Yeah, during the training class, I remember one thing that has stuck in my mind for years. Chief Powell was a training officer, and we were at the tower, and we're going to rappel out the windows. And he told Jim Parker to go up take a lifeline and go up on the roof and secure it for us to slide the rope. Well, we waited, and no rope ever came down. So he turned around and looked at me and said, Osborne, go up and check on Parker. So I went up, and Parker was up about the 4th floor on the fire escape shaking. Said, I can't go any higher, I'm scared. And I said, well, you just stand here and hand me the rope. So I went up and tied it off. And I never did tell anybody this during the time because I didn't want to get Parker in any trouble. But he made it through training, and I mean, he overcame his fright of that. But I'll never forget it. You know, it's just one of those funny things that happens. Jerry Braston was in the class, Philip Hockett, Wayne Kofer, Gary Falk. In fact, Gary and I went to be fingerprinted. I met him at the police department, and I had gone to school with him. So you know, where I was in life with family and all, I just needed a secure job, and that's the reason that I applied at the places I did, because I didn't feel like that I wanted to spend my life driving an oil truck, and I wanted something that was secure that that my family could depend on. Been married 59 years, will be 60 years in September. And I have 3 children, 8 grandchildren, and they're all very grand. First station assignment was Central Fire Station on Engine 2. Well, I had never worked in that type of environment at all. And, you know, my first day on the fire department was in training. So it was, you know, sleeping in a dormitory with other guys and all this stuff was new to me. I mean, you know, I was never in the service, so it was new to me, but I adapted to whatever. And like I say, I needed a job, and this was it. D.C. Burns was my first captain. There were several of the people I went through training were there. Philip Pocket was there. Jerry Branson was there. Wayne Cofer was there. And of course there was Jay Lewis. And the one that was in my training class, I forgot, was Spooky Phillips, Clarence Phillips. And he was quite a character.
Yeah,
I was called the Oz. No, Jerry Branson, I think's the one that came up with it. And he said, "Here comes the Oz." Well, you know, we all slept in the upper floor of the Central Fire Station, and I won't call any names, but one of the firefighters was scared to death of spiders, so I took a real fine fishing line and hooked it to one of the lights above his bed and put a rubber spider on it, and would let it down on his face, and he'd smack that thing and I'd pull it back up. And everybody in the dormitory was awake by that time, wondering what he was hollering, and trying to kill that rubber spider. Yeah, well, growing up on a farm, almost all farm kids learned to cook because all of our meals were homemade. And I still make homemade biscuits and stuff like that. Each company cooked for a week. So, you know, there were 4 companies in Central Fire Station. So once a month, you had 1 week a month to cook. And the captain would tell you, tomorrow's your day to cook. And he would help with it. And yeah, absolutely. You know, there's a lot of discussions and stuff going on, and a lot of fun things happen while we're eating. I mean, one of them that I recall very much so, and Raymond Reddick, who died this past week, was at one end of the table, the long table, and he said, "Well, somebody passed the butter," and nobody paid any attention. Where somebody passed the butter about 3 times, and finally he turned his head and a stick of butter hit him beside the face. And I never will forget that. And I thought about that the other day. I said, you know, the stuff that we did to that poor guy, and he took it all in stride. He was such a great guy. Well, it was a broomstick with dynamite paper wrapped around it, and a fuse, and a flammable fuse. And he came to the door with tears running down his cheek, and he said, "I've just had all I can stand. I can't take any more." He said, "I'm just going to get rid of all of y'all." And he lit a match to that. And I was one of the ones that pushed the air conditioner out the window and went out the window. We had to buy an air conditioner because of it. Well, at Central Fire Station, there was an A&P down a block and a half from there. And we would walk down to the A&P and get the groceries. And sometimes if it was a lot, we would bring a shopping cart back and then take it back. We went back the next day, or somebody would. But usually we kept a shopping cart from the A&P at the fire station to take backwards and forwards. And there were a lot of pinto beans eaten, and a lot of spam and slaw and that kind of stuff. We chipped in $1 a day. And if we had something special, like maybe once a month we may have steak, and we may have to throw in $2. But typical Sunday afternoon at Central Station back in those days, we had 2 or 3 auxiliary firefighters that would come, and on Sundays particularly. And I think some of them want to get away from their wives and stuff, but I don't know. But I remember Roy Jones and Bob Wilson and some of those guys, and they were they always wanted to ride on the truck I was on. They would jump on if we got a call, and we had a good time together. My family usually came for supper on Sunday afternoon. Yeah, there was a lot of the kids got to know each other fairly well from meeting there, and some of the wives sometimes would carpool together. Ben Fields' wife and my wife would ride together some, and with all the kids in the car, take turns driving. But what a lot of people don't realize, we had to pay for parking. And it was like $30 a month out of your $312 for parking. And what we did, we had 2 shifts back then, so they were split up between, you'd move your car in the morning to the street so the other guy could get the parking place in one of the parking lots. And you split up the cost, and it was usually $30 a month, so it cost each one of you $15. But, and all the other fire stations in the city of Greensboro had free parking. There was a drawback to working at Central Fire Station because, when you're making $312 a month and you're taking $15 of it to pay for parking. Downtown, parking on the street, you were allowed like 2 hours. And you're on duty for 24 hours. So, you could go move your car every 2 hours if you could find another space to put it in and not pay. But what if you're on a fire call, then you're gonna get a parking ticket. And back then, they were very strict. I mean, in fact, we call them parking maids. They had 3 or 4 police officers, and they would eat lunch with us a lot. The cooking, actually, there's a cookbook, and I should have tried to find it. It's a nationwide thing, and I had a couple of recipes in it. They sent a notice to the fire department. They wanted some recipes for firefighters in different areas of the United States, and 2 of the recipes that I sent in got published in the cookbook. And I've got that cookbook somewhere, but I don't know where it is. I'll try to find it. One of them was potatoes with cheese on top, baked, thin sliced potatoes with cheese and crackers on top, baked. And I'm trying to think what else I did in. There was 2. I had 2 recipes in the book, and I can't remember what the other one. I hadn't thought about that in years. At Central Fire Station, weather permitting, the parking lot in the back, when everybody moved out of it, all the businesses, cars were gone. We put up a net and played volleyball. And I never did play as much as most of the other guys did, because I was always trying to rest so I could make it the next day. Because I was doing farm work and a lot of other things when I was, when I became a fireman. I was 27 years old. The one before me was R.L. Powell. He was 31. I was the youngest fire captain that the Greensboro Fire Department had ever had at the time I made it. The school kids all came to Central Fire Station for a tour. Well, I was in charge of the upstairs cleanup in the mornings. Each captain had a part of the building. One had the truck room, one had the offices. But anyway, the captain that was up there before me whenever they got through shining the brass on Fridays, they had to wash the rags so they'd be ready for the next week. They had an old Maytag wash machine, Ringer wash machine, utility sink at the back of the station there. Well, there was 3 or 4 school classes coming through, and I matched with the guys up there about washing rags and lost. I think it was fixed, but I lost. So I was down washing the rags, and all the guys were standing around laughing about it, And one of the teachers said, y'all laughing about the rookie washing the rags? One of the guys said, no, he's the boss. But they thought I was a rookie because, I was one of the younger ones there. And I never will forget another thing about being a young captain. Plumer Leslie was driving for me one time, and he had a little scratch the car at a turn, and I told him to stop, and he said, I'm not stopping, I didn't do any damage. And I said, you hit that car, and I said, stop. And so he stopped, and he said, boy, I was a firefighter before you was born. I looked it up, and he was. So being young sometimes has deterred. As far somewhat, yes. I don't think there's near as much of it. Of course, I haven't been involved in the fire department. I've never been, in the last 29 years, I probably hadn't been in 3 fire stations, other than I was on the board of directors at Pleasant Garden, but other than that, when I left, I was gone. I mean, I did take a couple of grandchildren back to one of the fire stations, and I was in an accident, and I went and took a couple of dozen donuts to the guys that answered the call. I was in a head-on collision in Greensboro, and they answered the call and helped me out. Okay, it's important when a retired firefighter visits a fire station that the younger guys particularly, and all the firefighters there, try to learn from them and let them know about how things are done in the present, and the retired guy can let them know how it was done in the past, and both parties can learn from that. Some people it's just a job. Others it is a passion of. To me, it was a passion, and I can tell you, I've made a lot more money away from the fire department my whole career than I ever made at the fire department. And it was a passion to me once I learned about helping people, and I've carried that on after my retirement, not in the fire service, but I've been on disaster things started in Florida when Andrew hit down there. I spent a month down there, and all the way to Katrina, I spent down at New Orleans rebuilding, and drove there, paid my own expenses, and and helped. But I've been fortunate to be able to do that. And in fact, I had employees that went with me, and I paid their salary while they were there to help. The first call that I remember going on that we had a working fire was on Church Street, and it was some type of a garage with mechanics working in it. I don't remember the name of it, but it was burning, and there was a oil or gas fire, and I can't remember who it was, but one of the other rookies caught a hydrant, or was supposed to catch a hydrant, and for some reason he was trying to turn it on the wrong way, and we didn't get water. So I saw what was happening. They said, we don't have any water. We don't have any water. So I ran back up and turned it the right way. He was trying to turn it off, and you can't turn it. Once the hydrant's off, you can't keep turning it. I rode the rescue about every day that I was there at Central Fire Station and at Station 5. And most of it was wrecks and drownings. I went on like 29 drownings in my career. And the one that I remember the most, there were twin brothers drowned out in out off of Wendover or towards Barlington area. And I mean, some of those are still, but I know we found the one. I didn't know there were two of them had drowned, and we found the body of one, got it out, and I said, went over to the grandfather who was there fishing with him, and said, I'm sorry about all this. And he said, are you not going to get his brother out? And I said, I had no idea that there were 2 drownings, but one of them went in to free up a hook and didn't come up, and the other brother went in to get him, and both of them drowned. And stuff like that, stays with you the rest of your life. Doing rescue work, there's some things that stand out. One that I never forget, there was an accident at NC 62 and Randleman Road, right there 2.5 miles from my house, which I went through that intersection this morning. But anyway, there was a Volkswagen had ran underneath a big flatbed truck, and there was a child there that had a piece of glass stuck straight inside. And I looked at it and I said, what in the world? Well, it was a convenience store right across 50 yards from there. And I told somebody, go get me a paper cup. And I put the cup over the eye and taped it. And I got a notice from the doctor at the hospital, wanted to know, when I went back to the fire station the next day that I worked, wanted to know who did that. And I thought I was going to be reprimanded. And he said, you saved that child's life by doing that. And stuff like that, is just. During 9/11, my first thing would be, whoever did this, Give me their names and I'll take care of it. Because I'm a person that believes in an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. You mess with me, you're gonna get messed with. When I found out about it, I was walked into the barber shop that morning and I had not heard anything about it. And it was the first plane that crashed into the building. And one of my cousins, who, I don't know whether you ever met Chip Osborne or not, but he's still teaches fire science and somewhere down in Rockingham County or somewhere, I don't know where. But anyway, not Rockingham, down in Troy area. But he was in the barber chair, and I said something about this firefighters going in. I said, that's their final thing is going in that building. He said, oh no, I said, they know what they're doing. I said, those buildings are not built for that kind of truck. I said, it rattled that building, every bolt in that building is loose. And I said, and it will collapse. Oh no, those buildings are built for that. I said, no, they're not. And while I was sitting there, the first building went down. And I said, he said, I can't believe that. I said, if you know anything about structures and know anything about engineering, you don't figure those factors in. Elvin Parrish was always, I thought, very intelligent, and R.L. Powell. And Chief O'Shea was a great business guy, but he was not a firefighter. I could never imagine him being on the line. He was not the type person that I would have ever imagined. And let me tell you about Chief O'Shea. When he died, I spoke at his funeral. And he had left me, this is one of the bolos, he had left me like 10 bolos and some Western hats and lots of stuff. And I'd like to tell you another story about Chief O'Shea. He came to me one day, and I was working it right after I made captain. I'd been captain probably 3 or 4 months, and I was on truck 2 at Central Fire Station. And he came to me one morning and said, I'm planning on going fishing this afternoon. And I hadn't taken my whole boat motor out in 2 or 3 years, and said, tried to crank it the other day and I couldn't get it to crank. He said, if I bring it up, if I go home to lunch and get it and bring it up here, will you get it running for me? And I said, yeah. So just bring it up here. Well, he got back about 1:45, I guess, and I put it on what we used to call a hitching rail at Old Central Fire Station. It was a guard that kept it from falling into the coal pit. But anyway, I put it on there, put a garbage can, filled it up with water, and got it running and everything. Well, Chief Barbie came back, walking back down the street from up the street, and he said, and all my guys were standing around me. And I was a captain, they were all standing around, and Barbie said, the first thing he did was walk on into the door there, then he turned around and came back. He said, Captain Osborne, said, do you think it's good for you to be out here doing this during class time? And I said, yeah. I said, you guys are learning something about working on motors. He said, well, I don't think that's going to help them fight fires. And I said, well, I just don't know what to do. And he said, well, I think you need to get in the class. I said, okay. I said, would you mind going back and telling Chief O'Shea he's not going to ever go fishing? And that was the end of that. By the way, I kept up the outboard motors and stuff that were used in the rescue. I kept them tuned up, and I've got the original K-12, Partner K-12 rescue saw. They did a newspaper article on me showing how to use it. I own that saw now. I bought it at the city auction. So, and it still runs, and I still keep it up, and that's been probably almost over 50 years ago. Yes, mostly it was busy work, like checking insulation in people's attics. I was actually on vacation in Mexico, and I had gone on vacation, and when I came back, Chief Ray Richard called me before shift change, before I went on duty, the day I came back, and said, Captain Osborne, I'm glad you're back. Said, I've got some serious allegations against some of your men. And he said, I'll get these guys in the office, and I'll be there in 10 minutes. I said, my goodness, what in the world happened while I was gone? He said, been waiting for you to get back to get this settled. I said, okay. But it was Jim Williams, Robert Adkins, and Charlie Thompson. So I called them in the office, and we were sitting there talking to each other, when he came in. Came in, opened his briefcase, and he said, now I want to tell you guys, I want some straight answers here. He said, this is serious allegations, and so forth and so on. He said, do you remember going down to a certain house, one of the streets there behind Station 10, and checking the insulation? He said there was a girl there with a young lady in a bikini, and y'all went in and talked to her. I said, oh my gosh. I mean, you can imagine what was going through my mind. And they said, yeah, we remember. He said, well, do you remember checking the insulation in the attic? And most of them sit there and kind of questioned it. No, I said, she said that they had 6 inches up there, and we didn't go check it. You didn't check it? No. We actually had 10 inches of insulation in the attic or something, something wasn't what they said. And they said, you didn't check it, so you're supposed to be checking it. So you can't go in somebody's house and tell them, well, you're lying, I need to look at it. I mean, that's what I said. And he said, well, we're supposed to be doing a job, and I want these guys to do it right. He said, they're going to have to be reprimanded for this. I said, you 3 guys can leave, I can handle this. Because if this is what this is all about, and boy, I jumped in his stuff, and I said, there will be a letter of apology here to these 3 guys before they leave in the morning. He said, hell will freeze over before you'll see anything from me. And I said, okay. He left. Before he got to the driveway, I was talking to Chief Powell on the phone. Chief Powell said, well, Captain Osborne, I don't know what she did. I said, well, you're in the line of me calling, the next one's going to the city manager. Now, if you want to do something about it, fine. If you don't, well, make a long story short, you can ask Jim Williams. I think he's supposed to be here this morning. You can ask him. He got a letter from the next morning before he left from Ray Richard apologizing for. But, that's what an officer's supposed to do. You're supposed to stand up for your men. I would never ask anybody to do anything that I won't do. I would never tell you to go in a building I won't go in. And I think it's, the most heartbreaking moment I had, and I don't remember the exact date, I was riding truck 1, I think, at the time, but we went down, and that's when the El Richardson Hospital was down in southeast Greensboro. And inside of the hospital, there was a house fire, and I went up a shed roof into the bedroom window and found 2 children, one in the bed and one on the floor. Took them out, both of them deceased, and I took them out, let them down. And before we cleared that call, we got another call on Church Street, Summit Avenue, out there right before we get to Station 12 on the right. There was a house trailer park there. There's a house trailer, 2 more children died in that fire. There was 4 of them within 2 hours of each other, 4 children. And I found all 4 of them. And that is probably the saddest day because I had children about their age. And like I say, there's some things that you carry. I never mentioned to my family. I never told I still haven't never told my family. Probably my proudest moment, I was in the JCs back years and years ago. And the burn center down at our Chapel Hill, University of Chapel Hill, UNC Hospital, we're starting a burn center, and the JCs were selling jelly. Well, I contacted the JC headquarters and arranged to sell the first jar of jelly in North Carolina, and it was televised and everything, and in the newspaper, a picture of me selling it at Central Fire Station to a burn doctor, to a doctor that worked with burn victims. And that's probably the proudest moment. I mean, there's several things. I was interviewed about hiring female fire. Chief O'Shea chose me when they were going to hire the first female firefighters to do an interview. And Susan Kidd, who worked for Channel 2 at the time, was the one interviewing. And I went up at the old tower, the hose drying tower at Central Fire Station, and brought down Rugged Ron, who was named after me. Brought him 190 pounds, took it out of the window by myself and brought down a ladder. And I said, I have no problem with any female being a firefighter if they can do that. the same thing I just did. And like I say, Chief O'Shea is the one that had me do that, you know. And for some reason, he always picked me out and when there was some interview to be done, or you know, a lot of the stuff up there, like the K-12 rescue saw said, you do a demonstration and we're going to put it in the newspaper and the reporters here doing it. I didn't know about it until I went to work that morning, and it happened at 1 o'clock the night before that night. And back then we were working 24 on, 24 off. And then later on that day we got a notice that Lacey Nelson had died. And so there was 2 firefighters, and that was the last day of that decade. It's really sad. It's really sad that trying to figure out how that can be avoided was my first thought was, you know, we need to figure out how for this not to happen again. And there are several things, you know, that happened in the fire department that afterthought changed. And I can give you another example of that. Jim Parker we were out at the mill, Revelation Mill, and Jim Parker was standing over watching everybody work, cleaning up the place, and the trucks were sitting outside running, and I said, will you go out and turn the trucks off? They're going to run out of fuel. I said, we've been here an hour and a half. He went out there and he came back in about 10 minutes. He says, Captain Osborne. Now, he was private at the time. I knew he went on to become a battalion chief. He said, I just ran 2 trucks together out there. I think I total lost both of them. I said, I didn't tell you to move them. I said, just cut them off. He said, I cut one off and walked down to the other one, and here that one came down the road. But anyway, that's how the Parker blocks got there. Some of my best friends to this day are the black firefighters. Eddie Coleman, he and I go fishing. Eddie's health is not good now, much like mine. But we have fished. I've worked on lawnmower equipment for them as long as I was in that business. And several of them, there's no difference in a person. It's what's inside. It's not the color of your skin. It's not, you know, it's what's inside. And there's good and bad in all people. And there's more bad white people in the United States than there are black people because there are more white people. So, for that said, yes, we have a lot of bad things going on with blacks, but we have a lot of bad things going on with whites. And as far as being friends, if you've got a black firefighter, I took Eddie into it. We were down, went fishing at one of my son's houses. Both of them have got big lakes, and I went to my younger son's house, and we came back and we were just down in Snow Camp, North Carolina, and I stopped this little restaurant, and I said, let's go in and get something to eat. And Eddie said, you think I can go in there and eat? I said, if you go in there with me, you're going to go in there and eat. And he said, well, you know, I don't look like there's any black people. I said, there will be when you get in there. As anybody says anything, you don't say a word. I said, I'll take care of it. And he said, I wish you'd have been with me when I was younger. but you know, it's what's in the heart. It's not the color of your skin or anything else. Yeah, like I say, I've worked with some that I didn't care for. I've worked with a lot more white people I didn't care for than I have black people because I had a lot more white people. But Plumer Leslie's son was working at the Natural Science Center, and he brought a great big snake up to the Central Fire Station. Eddie was sitting in the TV room asleep in one of those chairs, and he came in with that snake, and Eddie is terrified of snakes. And he got close to Eddie with that thing and woke Eddie up with it, with the head right. And Eddie jumped up and knocked the TV off in the floor. And somebody told Eddie that he's going to have to pay. Now, Eddie wasn't on my company. I was a captain at the time. Eddie wasn't on my company. And they said, Eddie's going to have to pay for the television. I said, no, he won't. I said, if anybody pays for it, it'd be Plumer Leslie and his son. And I said, but the best thing to do is all of us chip in and buy a new television. I said, it's not Eddie's fault. But I've always carried a little pair of pliers in my pocket. I got them in my pocket now, a small pair of pliers. And I forgot who it was now, kept picking on me. Well, they went to sleep in the TV room, and I got a hold of Opie's ear with my pliers. I said, you gonna mess with me anymore? He said, what? Who is this? I said, you don't need to know. I said, I just want to know you gonna mess with me anymore. He said, no, sir, I won't. I said, I'll let go if you promise. I don't even remember who it was now, but I've got a pair of those little pliers in my pocket. I've carried them for years. Yeah, I would.
All right.
I would probably do a few things different, but I would do it all over again.
If you could speak to the rookies today, what would you give them advice for their career?
Probably the most important thing would be to don't let it just be a job. Let it be a passion for helping people. And carry it on throughout your life, not just while you're on duty. But if you see an accident out here, stop and help. If you see, I've stopped on when a volunteer fire department, the one close to my house there, I went down one day. They kept hearing these sirens, and I went down to see what was going on. Well, they had a house fire, and they were trying to make an interior attack, and the thing had already gotten through the ceiling, and it needed to be ventilated. And I said, "You going to ventilate it?" He said, "What do you mean?" I said, "You going to cut a hole in the roof like that?" "No, we don't ever do that." I said, "Well, if you got an extra coat and an axe," and I went and did it, and they put the fire out. Well, tell me how that works. And I said, that hot gases and stuff, you got to have somewhere to go. And I said, it's just building up and getting hotter and hotter inside, and it's just like inside of a stove. I said, if you can't go out the chimney, you know it's going to burn everything up. And they said, well, you know, and this was the fire chief. I said, you know, I never really understood that, why they always cut a hole in the roof. I said, the best thing you can do, if it's broken through the ceiling and it's coming out around the eaves of the house, the best thing you can do is ventilate it immediately. And I don't care what size building it is, it doesn't make any difference. That hot air's got to have somewhere to go. And until you understand firefighting totally, I mean, you know, when I came on the fire department, the first thing I wanted to do, if it broke through the roof, was put an air ladder nozzle in it. And that we burned the building down. I mean, we burned it down. It didn't burn, you know, it probably would have gone out if we had to. but you know, that's firefighting. But if you don't learn from mistakes, then you're not a good firefighter. Learn from your mistakes and don't make that mistake again. You know, whatever it may be. I will tell you, my wife and I may have told you this, were invited to be in the royal tent with the royal family for the Highland Games in 2017. The only American couple that's ever been in there.
Wow.
And I got pictures shaking hands with Prince Charles, and I got the copy of the gold leaf thing that says you're invited to join in the royal tent during the Highland Games. Back when I retired, I had one grandchild. He was 3.5 months old. And for his first Christmas, I retired the 1st of July of 1991. And for his first Christmas, I built him a toy box in the shape of a fire truck. And the size of it is what one sheet of plywood would build. So my daughter put a mattress in the back of it, and he slept in it until he was about 3 years old. And he would get in it every day and play. It had a red light that went round on top, and a rope where you could make a bell ring. And the little steering wheel was about probably 8-inch diameter, and I carved it out of a solid piece of walnut. Well, when he was about 3 years old, my daughter and her husband separated and divorced, and she didn't have a place to keep the fire truck, so I took it and put it in the garage with my show cars. And every time he'd come, he would sit in it for hours. Well, when he got to be about 6 or 7 years old, he came to me one day and he said, "Papa, I'd like to drive my fire truck." Well, the little fire truck had wooden wheels and it wasn't drivable at all. But I got thinking it'd be better if I just built him another one, but he said, "I want to drive that one." So I took it into the garage and built a running gear with the steering and everything, with brakes, forward and reverse, an electric motor that I had taken out of an electric lawnmower. And and built it into a fire truck that would go about 12 miles per hour forward and reverse. Put disc brakes on it, steering. Used the same little walnut steering wheel because a bigger steering wheel there was not room for it. And put a pump on it that pumped 60 pounds pressure water. Used a 6-gallon diesel fuel tank underneath the seat for water. And the kids, 3 or 4 of them would get in the back, 2 in the cab, and they would I built a little car, put a metal hood on it, one of these little plastic cars that children ride around in, battery-powered cars. It was actually a Jeep, and put a metal hood on it and put a stainless steel container in there that I could put oil and rags in and set them on fire, and then they would come and put the fire out. And they were in parades. They were in one in Summerfield, they were one in Stokesdale, Pleasant Garden, a couple down in Alamance County. And at their school, when they were in kindergarten and 1st grade and 2nd grade, I would take the fire truck there and they would show it, do a demonstration with it. But I still have the fire truck now. It doesn't belong to me, it belongs to my grandson who's 29 years old now. But if he ever has children, he's not married, if he ever gets married and has children, it'll be theirs. I mean, it's his fire truck because I built it for him. But every one of my kids, we have 8 grandkids now, and every one of them have driven the fire truck, every one of them have been in parades and stuff with it. It's been on television 2 or 3 times. I've got several films of it, and it's one of a kind. Somebody from Roanoke, Virginia saw it at one of the car shows that I do, and wanted to buy it, and I told him it wasn't for sale. I said, it's the only one in the world, and I'm not building another one. But anyway, it's been quite an experience for the children. But Roy's folks is one, and I've got a copy of that I should send it to. You make an extra copy and send it to the fire department so everybody can see it, of the video of it.
We hope you enjoyed watching these documentaries. It was our goal to share and preserve the memories of our retired Greensboro firefighters. It is our desire that these documentaries will inspire future generations to continue the brotherhood, sisterhood, and camaraderie while always striving for excellence in their careers. While fire apparatus, equipment, and technology have improved, several things will always remain the same. The courage and bravery it takes to mitigate natural and man-made disasters will always be a part of the job. Although our retirees are no longer a physical part of the GFD world, a giant piece of each retiree's memories have been shared with you today. These memories will be in their hearts and minds forever. A special thank you goes out to Captain Harold Haney for his many long hours of recording and editing. Thank you, Harold. A job well done.